For those of you who are around my age, I want you to tell me if this rings a bell. If not, don't worry, I'll fill you in on what exactly it is afterwards. So if you aren't me and still smiling from when the synth part started in that rad song, here's an explanation. That was the 1980s version of the intro song for Disney's weekly Sunday night movie broadcast program. It still sticks in my mind even after all these years, probably as a result of my parents' diligent efforts to find age-appropriate content to record on VHS tapes that my younger sibling and I could rewatch on a regular basis without close supervision. There have been many iterations in what this broadcast program was, some of which you might be more familiar with than the Disney Sunday movie, but that is the one that I grew up hearing most often. But why am I playing Disney music on a video essay? Won't that get demonetized immediately? Well, it actually might not get the copyright bots angry, due to how these little musical intros seem to have all but disappeared from any and all official sources. It turns out it's not just these cool little musical intros that seem to have mostly disappeared, but also a handful of forgotten made-for-TV movies that I accidentally stumbled upon. In the decades after its first major rise to prominence in theaters, with films such as Snow White, Pinocchio, Peter Pan, and Cinderella, Disney expanded its repertoire to television, with an anthology series originally hosted and introduced by Walt himself. Probably most well known throughout history as The Wonderful World of Disney, the series began in 1954 and is still running in some form today, though much different in its execution now. Walt apparently wanted to venture into TV to help finance this little theme park project you might have heard of called Disneyland. From this Wonderful World anthology series, countless live-action movies, TV shows, musicals, and their prestige animated feature films have been aired on all the big three television networks. Since 1997, however, it has aired exclusively to this day on ABC, since Disney bought ABC in 1995. Many of the creations spawned from Walt's TV endeavor have been enjoyed by countless families for multiple generations. Even if you've never seen them, most casual Disney fans are aware of some of the bigger original works, such as Disney's interpretation of Davy Crockett. The theme song alone ended up being a chart topper.
Davy, Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier.
So now I have a kid, and like my parents before me, I'm constantly searching for stuff that's appropriate for them to watch, yet not so grating that as a parent, I couldn't stand to watch along with them. On one day, I was feeling particularly nostalgic, and so I had been searching specifically for one of those Disney TV movies called The BRAT Patrol that aired on the Disney Sunday movie program that I grew up watching repeatedly via those VHS recordings my own parents made that I mentioned earlier. Well, it turned out that The BRAT Patrol wasn't on Disney+. Actually, it wasn't on anything else. At least, nowhere I could find it. Now, since I started making this video, YouTube and a couple other services decided to make it for rent, but there are lots of other films where this is not the case. After a few of my searches trying to find the BRAT Patrol, I found all of these other vaguely familiar Disney made-for-TV films that are nowhere else to be found, save for their nearly empty IMDb pages, some of which you have to be very specific to even find. Some of these films include Ask Max, where Chunk from the Goonies is a genius inventor that makes a bike that flies. But the bike he flies in is totally not like that other 80s movie where a kid flies through the air on a bike. A sequel to the Tom Hanks Daryl Hannah film Splash called Splash 2. That's T-O-O, by the way. And also Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah are neither to be found in the film. A teen comedy starring a very young Keanu Reeves called, appropriately, Young Again. That was definitely not just remade 23 years later into a film with a completely identical premise and plot structure starring Zac Efron and retitled 17 Again. Also a lesser-known Shaggy Dog sequel, pre-Tim Allen-verse reboot, of course. And an obvious Nuki knockoff called Fuzz Bucket. This all made me wonder, why aren't these nostalgic, albeit cheeseball family movies like The BRAT Patrol available anywhere for me to let my child discover the magic of? Why isn't Disney, who owns everything, putting these up on Disney Plus? Alright, first off, I am not a lawyer. I've done the bare minimum research needed to make this video, so look to the comments to see where I messed up. Oh, by the way, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe and stuff. If you want to, I think there's a Patreon link. You can throw me money if you want, because YouTube probably is not going to give me anything for this. With all that out of the way, the short of it is probably that it has something to do with how rights work for music. See, as far as I understand it, rights to broadcast music, i.e. play it on TV in the traditional sense, like over the air or cable or whatever, requires one kind of rights, whereas streaming or downloading or otherwise purchasing, I think, requires a different kind. This is why when my spouse watches Dawson's Creek reruns on Hulu, they get really upset because the song is not there. Also because I sing the real song really badly whenever I catch her watching it, because I think it's funny. She doesn't. But anyway, apparently this is the case actually with a lot of stuff, like The Wonder Years on Hulu and Charmed on Hulu. See, for a lot of shows that aren't insanely popular, companies will cheap out, and rather than pay the artists who made their musical works available for this show, would rather tear open the musical guts of a show and toss the parts they don't want to pay for out for ostensibly cheaper replacement music. But there's another issue with this. What about shows or films that weren't even kind of popular? Well, then most companies just decide it's not worth it to even deal with them, and so they never put them online. For example, Northern Exposure, a show from back in the day, is impossible to find on streaming, even though it was relatively popular, because it used a lot of contemporary music. As a result, you can still find it on DVD in a few places, but not online streaming anywhere. And what about even older shows? Or even movies that were made for TV that weren't even popular enough to justify ever even releasing any sort of standalone media like Blu-ray or DVD or VHS or Laserdisc or, wax cylinder. Well, unless someone thought to record these and then was kind enough to transfer them to someplace online for others to enjoy, it's just gone. Well, except, remember when I said IMDb were the only places to find them? Well, that's not exactly true, thankfully. A good number of them in their entirety can be found by scrolling through the deepest depths of not only YouTube, but places dedicated to keeping copies of rare media available to the public, such as archive.org. Now, I'm not endorsing anything that's illegal, but I want to unrelatedly point out how we all should be thankful for people who share creative works that, cheeseball or not, were enjoyed by someone who thought they were from an era forever lost to time. Now, go call your little brother and laugh while you both watch a young Sean Astin zoom around on a military base via his rad scooter. Now, there is one last reason some companies, including Disney, have for not making certain media available that I do not want to gloss over. Disney has always had a strange relationship with its history. On the one hand, Walt's once tiny animation studio has proudly deified the mustachioed maestro of Mickey as a demigod whose only weakness ever was that he sometimes snuck in a cigarette every once in a while off camera. A man whose bronze likeness forever smiles at the gates of shining castles and magic kingdoms. A man whom single-handedly legitimized the long-form presentation of animation as a medium for entertainment. On the other hand, a few key searches on the web yield more than a few, let's say, interesting artifacts. Artifacts which the company would rather lock away forever from all eyes, deep within the bowels of the Disney vault, if it could. Yes, plenty of Disney's more curious older fans know about at least a few of the House of Mouse's scandals of the past, and it's sometimes, let's call them problematic, portrayals. I do want to take a moment to say it is important to be aware of that aspect of Disney's history, not to glorify nor to vilify anyone who enjoys the works crafted by countless artisans shared with the world now for nearly 100 years, but as to ensure that newer generations don't make the same mistakes that people at Disney, and unfortunately people in general, made in their respective times. Decisions which today might seem horrible and obvious, but that were made regularly back then, by many, perhaps without even giving it a second thought. It's a delicate subject for sure. Censor, and yes, you show disapproval of some aspect, but you allow for the chance that others make the same mistake rather than learn from them. Show, and you potentially glorify something horrible. Or something I'd argue is worse. You normalize it. Now, I don't know if there's a single approach that works perfectly regarding this, but I will say that I am more of a fan of the Warner Brothers animation disclaimer approach, rather than Disney's attempt to pretend certain works they made never existed. Even though a couple of Disney's bigger films now do have a similar sort of disclaimer prefacing them. Regardless of how Disney decides to do business, I do hope they find a way to tastefully incorporate the media that they've omitted in one way or another, whether it's lost gems like the BRAT Patrol, or the only full-length animated Disney feature film not currently available on Disney, Make Mine Music. The preservation of historical media is important, but let us not forget the difference between a reminder of our past mistakes and outright glorification of them. Hey guys, thanks again. That's another video, I guess, in the bag. I know it's quite a bit different from the last one. Still kind of explorations of media. Just to give you a little background on myself, this video series I've been doing is kind of just something on the side for fun. My first job after a short stint working at IHOP was working at video stores. I worked at a video rental store for years and also a video purchasing store at a mall, if that gives you an idea of how old I am. I know this is a little non-directional, whatever, but that's just kind of how I work. And because this doesn't really make me any money, it's kind of whatever people want it to be. In any case, thank you for listening and watching, and please share comments, criticisms, creative feedback, all of that stuff. I read it and I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you guys here soon with another project. Thanks again for sharing your moment with me.
Shouldn't have to say we all owe you Wonder what the BRAT Patrol is doing right now.
Probably reading some comic books.
Assume defensive positions and take cover! Get Newmeyer!